Hello, welcome back to another video with Enno from Fantasy Tag TV, and today we'll be discussing the 2022 forwards for SuperCoach. Very, very interesting line, as it always is. A lot of guys to assess. Obviously, structure with our whole team first and foremost, as to how many guys you will pick here. But for those one or two spots that are up for debate, I'll try and help you today with a few notes I've got on these guys. Try and make it a bit clearer because, it's even doing this for me because I'm still up in the air with a lot of these guys as to who I'm going to pick. So I have narrowed it down to a few in my mind, but there's still a lot to pick out with these guys, and it's always a very, probably the hardest position to pick from. Rucks maybe, but obviously that's been pretty easy of recent times. But forwards always throws a bit of spanner in the works. So we'll see where we can get at the end of this video. Before we do get into it, just give a shout out and a follow to me on Twitter if you can. I'm almost at 500 followers there, so appreciative of that. Always like getting into discussion and into the comments, DMs if you want, and pre-seasons, a lot of opinions flying around, and I like to give mine, so happy to discuss on there at any time. Give the Fantasy Tag TV account as well. I'll be tweeting some stuff on there. Continue to do so. And also the Facebook page that George is doing some sort of longer write-ups as well that he's mentioned. So give those a follow and join the Discord as always. I'll link that in the description below if you're not in it already. Lots of stuff going on there in pre-season as there is anywhere really. So let's get into the first guy that we've got here. Just going by price. And sort of who's relevant, won't be speaking about everyone from the top down, but Josh Dunkley, 558k in half of the sides in 2022 so far. Had the big 2019, that post round 6 average of 130, had a double ton in there. It was, when he burst onto the scene as a SuperCoach option was very, very impressive. 2020 was more of a disappointment just because of that syndesmosis that he copped fairly early. He did start, I think, poorly round 1, but a couple of decent scores, and then copped that injury which set him back that season. And then, of course, it did kind of happen again in 2021. He started even hotter, back to his sort of 2019 best of 130 there. Did it for 6 rounds and unfortunately popped the shoulder against GWS, I think it was, and just struggled to come back, after the injury. He did get back into the midfield a bit there, but just couldn't find his form that he's shown for a couple of years. So, it is always tough coming back mid-season, from an injury, especially into a side like the Dogs that are, a pretty well-oiled machine with a lot of guys in that midfield. So that probably played a part. But for me, he's a lock. He's having a full pre-season. I just don't see how you avoid this man. Even at his price, he's somewhat, a value because of what he can produce. So, scary to think if he just does get a good run at it and put a big season together without any injuries of what he could average, and having that option as a forward, I just don't see how you bypass it. So, we'll move on quickly from Dunks. He hasn't moved from my side since the team picker first opened. So, Mitch Duncan. Bit more up for debate with this guy, of course. 540k, 28% of sides. First year he's been a mid-forward since 2011. In fact, so just over a decade with this guy. As we know, he's been a premium midfielder of the comp. Obviously probably not near the top end of guys, but he's always been a very, very solid contributor for the Cats over a number of years now. Got that premiership early on in his career, which was nice, but he's been a very durable player as well. Obviously, it spans further than the 2015 there, but especially the last 5 years until 2021, he was very durable. Only missed a few games, but leading into last year, he did have those calf issues, and then had the PCL in about around 10 or 12 or whatever that was. Did return for finals. Started playing a bit of a different role off half back in the first one. And played quite well. Obviously, there's a guy like him who can find the footy at the best of times. Midfield, at half back, it was very easy for him. Unsure on what his role he's going to play leading into this season. He has a bit of an interrupted pre-season as well, so there's a bit of question marks on his fitness, but you know, he's a gun player. The only issues with me are the injuries that he's had recently. He is on the wrong side of 30, of course, as well. How does that affect him? It's just a wait and see. Possible upgrade target down the line. I would not be against bringing him in. Probably at a bit of a cheaper price, and once we know his role and his fitness is looking like. So not a starting pick to this point, but definitely a guy I'll be looking at some point during the season. Tim Taranto, similar boat. I've got him in as Duncan. That's probably more guaranteed that we will own him at some point this year. But he is 529k, 19% aside, so quite a bit too. Was the 2019 Giants BNF winner, had a great season that season. Then they made the grand final, and he was only 22 or so then. So, as we know, great inside ball winner. We know all his attributes, not the best by foot, but can match it with the big boys in tight. 2020 had a preseason shoulder injury, led to him, missing a chunk of time and coming in, halfway through the season, and finished it off quite poorly by, even by his standards, 84 average, not great. Couldn't really get going. 2021 came in with a full preseason and just got back to his, usual self that he was like in 19. So slight issues there that he did lose CBAs, but it always has happened time to time, especially with GWS players. And Leon does like to move the magnets just like Bevo. So here's the outset though for 2022. Toby Green is out, of course, as we all know, until round 6 with the suspension. That probably almost secures for Taranto's playing a bit forward. He's done it in the past. He's probably the best of the GWS mids, you would say, at doing it. Has decent attributes to take some contested marks, put on forward pressure, that sort of stuff. And for whatever reason, he seems to kick better at goal than he does around the ground to his teammates. So, he's already been acknowledged by Leon that, he's aware of Taranto's flexibility, blah, blah, blah. They did try Jelly there. Obviously, we saw that last year, but I think Taranto's probably the better of the two, and Kelly's better as the sort of outside mid, sort of delivering it into forward 50. Much like Duncan, is a wait and see. Hopefully, when Toby Green comes back, he gets that role back in the midfield, and he's a guy that we attack as one of our first upgrades. So probably more guaranteed than Duncan that he'll feature in our sides. But in a similar boat where I just don't think we start him. We pick him up at some point down the line. The next guy is Dustin Martin. So, 503k, 28%, 27% aside, sorry. We sort of know what we get with Dusty most of the time. Have done for about 10 years. So, until last year when he got the kidney injury and obviously missed the rest of the season, had to have surgery, lost a bit of weight, had to put it back on, is reportedly having a very good preseason this year. Fit and playing is, obviously a lock for 90 plus. The only thing I would say with Dusty and is probably more related to the Richmond Tigers as a team. How do you see him going this year? Obviously in a more, a winning side, you're going to average more. So, the Richmond Footy Club has never really had big SuperCoach scorers, for quite a while. So, winning games, Dusty will share most of the points. So you just got to really, think, are they going to actually improve? They're hard to get a read on, even as a Richmond fan myself. They're very, very hard to get a read on. They obviously sort of reset it a little bit, but they got Robbie Tarrant in to fill a hole, which shows they are still trying to probably have one last crack at it. So who knows? Similar to the other guys, though, I probably just don't think he's worth a start. He is at a decent price where you can, and if you believe that he will get back to near his best, but possibly just a mid-season sort of upgrade and trade in for me. Then we get to Adam Treloar. Very interesting here, this guy. He's been a fantasy pig for years. This is the first time he's been forward eligible since his rookie season. Average, look at those numbers in his history. That as a forward is an absolute dream. But there are some issues with him. He had the 2020 off season, much documented. We all know what happened there. With the move from Collingwood, had some very good form early last year though. I think he was averaging about 100 until round 10 when he got the syndesmosis injury. But that's just been his MO. He's getting injured almost every year, it seems like now. couple of hamstring injuries, re-injuries. Now the syndesmosis last year. When he came back, he actually did find his form after a few games and had a really, really strong finals performance in 3 out of the 4 especially, and had a very, very large grand final with the Bont. So did find some form there, which is promising, and why probably some are looking at him heading into this season. But it's just too much injury history for me and very recent, so I just don't like him as a starting pick. You always got to throw up a Dogs player as you're unsure on their role, because you just are. But I think he's one that, even when he was playing half forward, he still had a couple of good scores as a half forward. So he's probably got decent attributes, or better attributes than, say, a Dunkley does as a forward. He's got the speed, does have quite a penetrating kick. At times can be quite wayward, but he's probably better as a forward and won't hurt his scoring as much as a Dunkley would. But as I said, for me, he's just not a starting pick. The injuries really, really put me off. And not against having him at some point in the season if he's looking very good. But, for me, he's probably a large avoid until we see what he's like and how his fitness is going. Jordan De Goey. Always very interesting with this man. 463k, 13%. He's been largely irrelevant, for most of his career as a Supercoach option until the back half of last year. So, played forward the first half of the season, had a concussion, did miss Anzac Day. As it sort of headed towards the bye, as you can see with the numbers, his CBA started to go up. It was about the time when Bucks was sacked. So was he trying to save his job, by playing De Goey there? Who knows? But it did continue anyway afterwards, and after Bob Harvey took over. So it was a very interesting midfield role. A lot of uncontested possessions. He did average 110 post-bye in the role, but it was about 20 odd uncontested possessions per game, which is crazy. That sort of game style. I'm not sure the Pies would want to continue that, especially with Craig McRae, the new coach, coming in. Do you want to continue to play that sort of defensive, sideways sort of footy? I wouldn't have thought so. But would have to wait and see. And I've got to put it there, as always, there is some off-field issues with De Goey that, can pop up at any time. Look at the games played column. It's not great, is it? Most of them aren't really for injuries either. So you've always got to keep that in mind with De Goey. I've got him as a probable starting pick if that midfield role continues, but I'm probably more leaning towards happy to avoid him, because if he's parked forward, he's not as great a scorer as, say a Heaney, who we'll get to later, as a forward. He's very inconsistent down there. Obviously can have some big games and massive performances, just not as consistent as a scorer as a forward. So would obviously have to have that midfield role, which I think everyone's probably saying, we know that. If he's playing midfield, we pick him. But got to see what's happening in the preseason games. So just a wait and see there for me. But just depends on that role. Zach Bailey I've got here as someone I was umming and ahhing to talk about, but I think he deserves a bit of respect to talk about. 459k in 6% of sides. Very super dynamic player. He's got the X factor. When Brisbane was struggling early on last year, he won that game for him, with that kick after the siren. Was, standing up in big moments. That's what we like to see, especially from, fourth-year players. So had a bit of midfield time as well. As you can see, the CBA numbers across the board were fairly decent. It's at least he's getting some midfield minutes. Probably would need that to increase to become a relevant pick for us. Not sure that happens. He's been lighting up the preseason, as it's seemingly all Brisbane players have, but it's just very hard to get a read on that midfield setup. There's guys like Jared Berry, Cam Rayner, obviously getting massive raps. We know Lachie Neale and Jared Lyons what they are. He's probably the fact that Zorko's moving out, which has been reported that he might slot into, sort of that sort of role. A similar sort of player, I guess, But it's just a wait and see for me. It's, he's a potential breakout, which I've got. A sneaky starting pick. Just would have to go with your gut there if you're going to select him, and it's probably very risky in a sense, but I don't doubt his talent, and I don't doubt if he gets enough mid-time that he would absolutely be an option. So Yeah, not against the pick at all. Just be a very ballsy man to do it. Taran Thomas, in a similar vein, but I probably have a bit more faith in Taran than I do with Zach as to what role they're going. Showed a bit more somewhat consistent scoring with a role, but yeah, 459k, similar price. Played forward in pretty much most of his career, averages just under a goal a game. He came into the AFL system just a bit unprofessional. I was sort of questioning, he's a top 10 pick. This guy, what's going on here? Obviously he's got a talent, but what was sort of the thinking there? But yeah, totally proven wrong last year, especially the back half. He showed absolute flashes of brilliance, and all he needs is just that mid-time and that role to continue his scoring. He averaged, as the season went on, you can see the CBAs went up, and he averaged 95 in any game that he had 40 plus. So, which was quite a few, about 10 or so. So that's a decent enough sample size for me to think that if that's going to continue, what can he average? I think he can hit the triple figures. But the issue is the 2022 North Melbourne midfield. What does it look like? They just got, obviously, the number one pick, Jason Horne-Francis. They got Hugh Greenwood across from Gold Coast. Yes, Cunnington is under a bit of a, situation there with his chemo. So hoping that all goes well. He'll be back at some point. I don't think he'll start the season, but Jed Anderson there as well is out until he gets that vaccination. So maybe early he does, but then it sort of throws up, do you want to be stuck with him if he's gone more forward once those guys are back? Hard to know. They've already got obviously Simpkin and Davies Uniacke and other guys like that. So it's tough. Is he going to keep those numbers up? Can they get 50 plus, which would be awesome. But I don't doubt the talent now, especially seeing it in the back half of last year. So yeah, that's just it. Does it continue? And I've got him here as a breakout contender. So I'm liking the pick. I just want to see how the setup goes, sort of in the preseason. So let's move on to probably the most polarizing figure in SuperCoach right now. Big article came out yesterday. Isaac Heaney is going to play midfield. He's looking forward to it. Horse has given him the challenge, and he wants to take it on. Callum Mills 2.0. Is it? I don't know. They're obviously different players, but 454k, owning 10% of sides, and I've got there his history because whilst people do love to pod him, it actually is a very, very decent history for a guy that's pretty much played forward for most of his career. There was a year in there, I think 2018, where he had a few midfield minutes there towards the back half. But yeah, even last year, look, zeros across the board almost as a centre bouncer, but was just hampered by injuries. During 2020 season, had the ankle surgery, and then last year had a thumb and a hand sort of issue that he sort of brought upon himself. But he just sort of doesn't seem to stay out of the wars of late. But he did struggle with the ankle surgery, and that probably led into a bit of this season. Season just gone. But he did have 2 games with 50% mid, and Fantasy Freako did tweet that the other day, and so I was going to look at where were they? But obviously they count mid minutes as wing. So those 2 games he had, they were towards the back half of the season. One of them was against Gold Coast. He was playing wing most of the day and sort of just doing what he wanted. I watched a bit of it just before, and he did kick 3 and 5 goals in these games too. So yeah, he did play 50% mid, but it wasn't as a centre bounce mid, which is what he's earmarked to do and get for this season. So probably the question mark is how good of a centre bounce mid is he? Can he sort of hang in there? Has he got the body frame? Has he got the skill set? Obviously we know he's a super, super talented player, but do the attributes he offers suit a role like that in 2022? Obviously he's a very different sort of player to Millsy, who we saw break out last year as a midfielder. So it is tough, but he's having a full preseason. He's absolutely flying. He's getting all the good press, which we probably see with Heaney every season, but I feel this time is different. He's getting the midfield minutes. I totally believe that will happen, with the departure of, they lost Dawson, they lost Hewitt, which spent a few, minutes in there. And Horse has said he wants to try him in there. He wants to give him a go. So for me, it just comes down to what what does the split look like? Is it 60-40, 70-30? I would actually probably prefer it right now if you was to ask me 50-50 or even closer to 40 midfield, 60 forward, because he still scores great and amazing as a forward, as we can see. Mid-90s is very, very good for a full-time forward. So if you can just get that little bit of mid-time to sort of... Because if you look at his history, big games he kicks big bags, but then he obviously has down games where he's not getting his hands on the pill, and as a forward that can just happen, and you have the down games which, you get a 130, you get a 60, you're going to meet somewhere in the middle as a 95 average. That's just how it works. But if you can get the midfield time, that 60s, he can go out of his game and he can just keep them, if he can just get 80s as his floor or as his poor games, then the 130s will come and then he'll be a 100 average player. That's the way I see it. Whether it pans out that way, who the hell knows? So that's why he's such a polarizing figure. There's always a debate. I think you hate Isaac Heaney or you love him. So I don't know where to sit on this. I actually do believe in talent in the pick. Whether I start with him is another question. So that's what I've got down there. I'm not gonna debate either way if you pick him or don't, but I can see both sides of it, definitely. And then I think the last one I've got here is Zach Butters. Now, super talented player. We know what we get with Zach Butters. Pretty much ever since he's came into the competition. Obviously, Port nailed that draft with their 3 picks there, and he's just super skillful. Just got footy smarts, especially around goal and in the forward half, and we saw that in the sort of first 3.5 games of last season. So he wasn't even getting massive midfield minutes, 20. Then in that 4th game, as we all know, he's on 90 or 100 at half time, and obviously scaled back to 90 odd. But with those 3.5 games, he was averaging over 100. So he was heading for a big breakout season. When he came back, just wasn't the same. That injury was a really weird one. He's saying he couldn't feel his foot, all that sort of stuff. So you don't, like with Dunkley, like with other guys that come back at the end of a season after an injury, especially one as strange as his, and as scary as his. I don't blame him for what they did at the back half there. So that's the injury concern you sort of have with him. Does he get the more mid-time that we're hoping that he would? I think he does. How much more? I'm not sure. So I would like to see it. And then the question mark of is it even enough runs on the board? 3.5 games. Are you picking him purely off just a couple of? It was a big game against Essendon that were really poor in this, the start of the season. And then a Tigers team that everyone sort of scores points on the Tigers. They always have. So not doubting the talent, but is it enough runs on the board to select him at as one of your forwards? I think it is. It's probably not enough runs on the board, but I think it doesn't matter as much when you just know what you got in a talent as good as Zach Butters. So I think he's a fine starting pick. He is another breakout contender that I've pretty much earmarked those last 4 guys as 4 or 5. But it's a very interesting position, the forward line. Right now, I think in my team I have Taran Thomas and Zach Butters, as I've got here on screen. But at one point that was Heaney and DeGoey, and another point that was I think I had. No, I didn't have a toy with Dusty, but I don't hate the pick either there. So Dunkley for me is a lock. The rest of the guys are up for contention, but I think the 4 that I've narrowed it down to for the 2 spots I think I'll be going at this point in time is Heaney, DeGoey, Taran Thomas, and Butters. So I've got to pick obviously at least one of them, and I think probably 2. So they're the guys I'll probably closely monitor over the next couple of weeks in the preseason and see where we're heading. So I really like Taran Thomas if he can get the role. Butters, I think I'm not as big on as others. Heaney, I do actually believe in, and then DeGoey, I need to see it as well. Just need to see him. Like Taran, I need to see the role to have confidence in selecting him. So anyway, I'll wrap this up. Thanks for watching. I'll be out with another video next week, probably with a slight team update, just where I'm sitting at now, but before the preseason starts. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.